Welcome everyone. This is Sustainable Headache Volume 2. We are very happy to be here again to talk about how sustainability is the new issue in our lives.
And what we will be talking today, because actually I just arrived here and I didn't study that much, so
we didn't study today.
Quite nice if you're going to add me and just
Yes.
to introduce you what we will be talking today.
All right. So today we are exploring how to deal with ESG. So what does it mean? It's a very complicated matter. It's a big matter that it's now becoming huge for the brands and for the supply chain. So we invited two super guests that you may want to have the honor to introduce.
So please, yes, it's really a pleasure. I'd like to introduce Rosie, which is it works for Mulberry, and Deborah Taylor, that works. It's the founder of the Sustainable Leather Foundation. We know each other since many years from your previous job, but I wouldn't say much. I will ask Rosie to introduce herself. Please give me a hand. Thanks.
Hi, thanks everyone. Good afternoon. So I'm Rosie Wollacott Phillips and I am Head of Sustainability at Mulberry. We are a British luxury leather brand and we have been working on sustainability right since we were founded in 1971. But it was actually last year when we turned 50 and we celebrated our 50th anniversary that we launched our Made to Last manifesto, which was the first time we publicly communicated about sustainability, our intentions, our aspirations, and also the challenges that we're facing. Thanks for having me today. Looking forward to this.
Thanks to you, Rosie, for being our guest. It's always a pleasure to discuss with you and basically with the deep knowledge that you have about real sustainability. And it's up to you, Deborah.
Hi, hello everyone. Yes, I'm Deborah Taylor. I'm the Managing Director of the Sustainable Leather Foundation. My background began with Leather Working Group. And it's interesting, we're talking about ESG now and sustainability. But when I first started working with Leather Working Group, we were only talking about environmental concerns. We weren't talking about the other elements that make up the sustainability story. And that's what we do at the Sustainable Leather Foundation. We look at the whole of ESG, and we also look at the whole of the value chain, which is really important. Some of the other work that I do has involved working with the UN on traceability and transparency for more sustainable value chains in the garment and footwear sectors primarily, but all of that work is transferable. And I'm also a council member with the Society of Leather Technologists and Chemists. So I think it's really important to be actively participating across our industry spectrum when we think about different organisations and things, so that we really can support with a fit-for-purpose tool for the industry. And I'm really glad to be here as well today. Thank you for inviting me.
So I think we feel a little bit like at school because we are, trying to better understand what does ESG mean. So I would love to start by actually analyzing what does it mean for real, using a definition, or maybe also, Rosie, if you can help me out to understand
Sure.
Why do brands and customers need to understand the concept of it?
And just let me add, because in the last couple of years there has been an incremental discussions on ESG, which stands for environment, governance, social and governance.
Yes.
And basically even on financial transaction is now something that's is going to be evaluated in the end. It had value to companies, but as everything in sustainability, there's a lot of chat, but there's not a real understanding. At least I don't really have a real understanding. So, Rosie, please give us a hand to better understand what's besides environment, social and governance, what's really in behind of these three words.
Sure. I think I always refer to ESG as the pillars of sustainability. You can't have one without the others. All three of them need to stand strongly. Otherwise, your strategy isn't going to have the depth that it needs. So when we built our sustainability strategy at Mulberry, we knew that we had to address first and foremost the environment. That's something that we're all aware of and all working to protect and to reduce our impacts. But to Deborah's point, the social element and the governance element has kind of fallen behind in recent years. So it was important that we were also addressing the people in our supply chains and the social elements of sustainability. You can't have a sustainable product if you're not paying your workers a living wage, for example. And then the governance for me kind of wraps it all up. It gives you that layer of transparency, of traceability, of authenticity, so that we are able to communicate with our consumers and tell the stories and talk about the achievements without greenwashing, which is quite a tricky space to navigate when you are dealing with a subject which is as complex as leather. Many consumers have such a surface knowledge of a leather industry anyway. So being able to bring depth to that conversation, backed up with those three pillars so you can stand strong, is really important. And also, businesses have a responsibility to be responsible. We can't just think about profits anymore. We have to think about planet and we have to think about people. So all of those things line up to doing good, to being a better business. Not just for our environment, but all the way through the sustainability spectrum.
That's now it's everything much more clear. I would like to have a review from the supply chain. Okay, actually we are supply chain players. We're value chain players. Sorry, but I would say that. It's more or less works the same. So we have to take care about how we do products. We have to take care how we treat people that manufacture the products. And we have to be transparent on the relationship we have with the people and the relationship we have with the customer. The customer, which is basically the not really the end consumer, but for us, it's like the end consumer for you. Everybody can be transparent. I wouldn't say everybody, but everybody can say everything on these matters. So, Deborah, I would like to understand better. When we talk about ESG, there's a clear way to measure everything because, you know, we at Montebello, we're not speaking that much, but whatever we do is just measure ourselves on whatever we do. So we measure the water consumption, we measure the discharge water, so what we send to treatment plant, we measure where we buy leather, we measure the performance, we measure everything, okay? Because we know that out of measure we can get data, and out of data we can discuss with other people on a common basis. There's a way to collect data that basically, and to measure the ESG of a company.
The three pillars.
These three pillars.
Yeah, and I think you're right. That the basic principle is you can't address something that you haven't measured. You need to know where you are now to know how you can improve. So if you're not measuring your impact and your consumption and your value to your community and your workforce, then you don't know where you can make those changes. So that's always the first thing to do, is to start understanding what your potential impacts are, good and bad. Because when we're thinking about the social realm, there are many good, positive aspects that a business contributes to local economies, and to production for countries and regions. So you have to weigh up everything that you've got, understand where your risks are within your value chain. And that's why we call it a value chain, because we hope that together that whole supply chain creates value. So it does become a value chain. You're all interconnected and you all rely on each other to make profit. And you can't be a good company if you're not a profitable company. You're not sustainable if you're not profitable. So all of these things interconnect, but you have to know where you are now to know what you need to do. That's where organizations like the voluntary standards organizations that we have in the industry, that's why they're important, because they can give you that benchmark, and they can also then support you with next steps and what you need to do. And there are lots of organizations now that are in that space that are designed to support. Good governance is your understanding of your risk, and yes, if you're importing material that you don't know the original source, you're opening yourself up to some risk. You could be risk of deforestation, it could be risk of bad animal welfare practices, it could be risk of human rights abuses, depending on where you're sourcing from. Now, those risks won't apply universally to every value chain, but they will apply to some. And then there might be one that you're more exposed to than the other. But crucially, if you're not aware of the exposure, you can't mitigate for that exposure. And that is where the partnership approach really comes into its own as well. We strongly believe that working with your suppliers and your customers, you will get the best results. Because I know when working with Rosie doesn't want to switch suppliers. Rosie wants a team of suppliers that she can grow with and work with and say, look, these are our problems, this is what we need to do next. But you only do that through strong relationship building. So sustainability and ESG is bringing all of these multifaceted areas together into one holistic approach. And it starts right at the top of any organization.
Yeah, and let me say that one of the things that you've been saying, which is a kind of partnership, I do remember in early 2015 when I was working at the brand as well. So it was from the good side of the value chain. Now I'm on the bad side. I'm back on the bad side because we are very bad standards, but. I would say that we were working closely with a consultancy company, which was quite where basically it has been the first time. It had been the first time I've been listening about B corporation and all these kind of measuring the impacts and all these things. But we've been really working keen with the material supply chain, which was a simple supply chain, measured, but was just a supply chain, into a co-evolution program. And this co-evolution program was really centered on these matters. So we have pillars. There were 3 pillars. One pillars were based on the environmental, where we were start looking not only to the LWG and even to other kind of, I would say, certification or audits that we were conducting. And but the audits itself were just shooting a picture of the day that we were there. So I had a team traveling to all the vendors, the material vendors, looking what was happening, looking at the governance, not the governance, looking at the how do you say, how they were, the housekeeping, which was fundamental. A good housekeeping means that basically something is running for the goods. So this is something really artisanal. Then we've been start conducting social audits and taking care about this thing, and then looking at their governance and relationship, and basically setting up this kind of. There was a slide that I still use sometimes, that there was this the brand and the whole value supply chain, and then start growing, and then there was the value chain going to be created, because some partners were growing and some were disappearing because probably they were not interested. But so it's fundamental to create a common point of view on the ESG matters with the whole value chain, in order just to co-evolve, because even the brands can learn sometimes from the best practice that we have on force, not as Montebello, but any other tanners or textile producer or outsole or for the metalwork, whatever. And as well from manufacturers. But somehow, Viola,
yes,
there's something that is still missing. we can measure, we can use several things, but how can it be possible to stand on a common database?
I would love, Deborah, for you to explain to us the beautiful tool that you, as a Sustainable Leather Foundation, developed, which is a dashboard. Okay, and I want you to talk about this because Rosie knows it, we know it, but I think it's a common base. It's finally one playground where we can all talk the same language, and so it might be interesting for all the listeners.
Yeah, one thing that became apparent early on when I got involved with the leather industry was that there were lots of people doing things in silos. And there was nothing that brought everything together in one place. And the problem with that is that for the guys in the supply end of the value chain, they were having to duplicate effort.
Sales director here, sorry. It happens.
Yeah. So they were duplicating effort, they were duplicating cost. And real examples of this come from the brand end, because the brands will say, okay, if you want to work with us, you have to have ISO 14001, or you have to have LWG, or you have to have an E-check certification. Instead of saying, I need you to be at this standard, and then the facility can say, yeah, I'd meet that through this company. So a real example is a company I have on the dashboard that are a footwear manufacturer actually, and they have 3 social audits because they have different brands that are requesting different social audits. Each of those audits intrinsically covers the same spectrum of responsibility, and each of those programs are programs that I would recommend anybody because they are well recognized international social programs. But that facility shouldn't have had to go through 3 of these audits at expense and time and energy when one would be sufficient. So what we've tried to do at the foundation is we've created this dashboard approach to responsible manufacture and production in the leather value chain. It's really simple. There are 3 wheels on this dashboard, one for environmental, one for social, and one for governance. It operates on a really basic traffic light system. If it's grey, the assessment for that hasn't started yet. If it's orange, the assessment started, but it's a work in progress still. They're not meeting the standard required yet. If it's green, they're meeting the standard, and if it's red, they're failing the standard. It's important to recognise that if it's red, it will be regulatory. We wouldn't give a red just because somebody's not quite ready yet. But if they're not meeting some of their legal permissions or requirements, then it would have to be a red. Now, within that, it's modular. So you don't have to do it all at once. This makes it an inclusive program for any facility at any point in their journey. Whether they're a facility like Montebello that has a lot of certification in place already, or a facility that's got no certification at all, they can participate and they can start learning. And the other vital ingredient to this dashboard, which is what makes it work, is that it brings all of an existing certification together in one window first. So we give equivalency of all of the existing good practice that's already audited and certified, and then we just plug the gaps for what's missing. So we're alleviating confusion, we're alleviating duplication of effort, and crucially, the end result is that for the brands like Rosie, they get this ability to see what they can verify and then talk about when they're talking to their consumers, because it's all in one place. They're not having to go out and get reports from lots of different people. And of course, the final thing in that puzzle that's been missing till now is that most of the voluntary certification and auditing up till now has only involved the leather manufacturers, the tanners. We're now including the product manufacturers, the chemical companies, the machinery companies, and we're about to start moving out to the meat packers and the farmers ultimately. So we do bring a completely connected value chain together through the dashboard to demonstrate good practice. The advantages of this are huge, especially when we're trying to combat greenwashing, when we're trying to be really transparent about what we're doing, because the dashboard protects the commercial integrity of each individual actor, but gives you your cumulative good practice.
Which it makes sense because your customer had 3 social audits. We got at least 8 last year. This year we got 8 social. And the funny thing is that any audits came out with some findings, and it's funny things that none of the audit get the same report. So anyone got their own findings, and some are completely weird, some other are real, but a real finding sometimes is not found as a finding from another brand, and that's fun. So basically, normally we don't really act immediately after the social, the audit that we got in terms of social, any kind of audits, because basically we're going to wait to have 4 or 5 of them in order to start to see whether we can summarize everything, all the action, which is not always easy. And I tell you that from a value chain partners, it's tough because then you got the social, then you got the environmental, then there is a brand requesting some standards, some other brands requesting all the standards, and really it's very tough to communicate to them and to make them understand that there should be a standard. Not any brand has his own standard. So I would like to understand a little bit more about this from your perspective, that basically as a brand perspective, whether it does make sense that we are sitting on hundreds different standards, which basically all speaks together, but they're not really linked to the same things. And what do you really think?
I completely agree when you said an audit is a snapshot in time. It's a good way to look at that day, that moment. But actually what's more interesting for me from a brand perspective is seeing continual progress. And you need to have that baseline. You need to start from somewhere. But it's much more authentic to know that a tannery partner is right at the beginning of their journey on whichever topic it might be, whether that's reducing their energy consumption, for example. And it's better for me to know that they are beginning that journey and working on it, rather than an auditor going in and, tick, sign off, done. It's way more authentic to be able to talk about the difficulties, the challenges, to be able to install solar generation panels or change all of your light fittings to low energy. I think there's so much more credibility in that than panicking and rushing around to get things right for an audit and walking away from it for 2 years. And that's why something like the SLF Transparency Dashboard is really effective tool for brands, because you can really drill into the specific details of what you're interested in within ESG, and it helps us benchmark against other suppliers and know where we can progress and where we as a brand might be able to help and influence as well. But also, to your point earlier, Luca, we are learning from our partners. Even though we're the brand and we're at the end of this supply chain, that doesn't mean that we're perfect. We are all on our own journey, and that's why we're going to be having audits soon of our manufacturing facilities, so we can link up your tannery processes with how we then make the product. And hopefully at the end of that, we'll be able to give some amazing substance and storytelling to those different pillars to get across to our consumers. And I think we'll come on to that a little bit later, but ultimately nobody is telling us that we have to be responsible or be more sustainable. We all just know it's the right thing to do. So by having these metrics and standards to back up what we're saying, it just builds that credibility throughout the value chain.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, with the dashboard, it's a living dashboard. It's not a static once every 2 year update. the minute something changes, we reflect that real time. So, for example, as you said, you're a partner of the foundation and you've got your own dashboard with us. If you send me a new certificate tomorrow, that will automatically update on your dashboard, and your partner profile and your QR code dynamically update so that your customers always see your real-time position. And if we have given corrective actions or advisory notes when we've delivered an audit, once those conditions are then met, we then change that and we do an interim report and we update the dashboard accordingly. So it's a real living tool that supports that continual improvement rather than being that snapshot. We all recognize that auditing on its own is not the single solution. It's the best solution that we have so far. Nobody has 24-hour monitoring, and we have to have something, but it's not a perfect solution on its own, which is why, again, the dashboard kind of fits that brief to give us the ability to keep reflecting the improvement as it happens and not just once every 2 years.
I totally agree. That's certification are today the best things we have in order to measure, to understand which is the position and the positioning of a member of a supply chain or a brand as well. I've been asking once to one of our customers, well, I was much younger, I won't do it again, but why do you ask my tannery to be certified? Which certification you do have? And say, we don't have certification, we don't need certification. But this is back to early 2000. And does the situation still the same? Because I haven't seen that many brands get certification. Okay, you can get 19, several kind of certification, but this is just is a little bit provocatory. I'm not asking, and is not something that I will be. I'm not expecting any answer, but certifications and audits as a certain, I wouldn't say cost. It's not just the cost, but basically. Just to give you an idea, we have a team of 4 taking care about these, and they are always fully booked. So, just to give you an idea, we have been planning to do our SA8000 starting in the second half of this year. We already moved to the first half of the next year because there was not enough space due to certification renewal, to audits. In the last, just to give you an idea, now we are asking our customer and giving at least 6 months waiting list in order to be audited, or in order to to be audited by them, because otherwise it's every 2 weeks we have someone, and that's the reality. Every 2-3 weeks we have some kind of audits, and somehow we even need to work on our projection. So we've been planning the SA8000 when we hadn't time to do it. So it's even really absorbing a lot of time. All this matter. It's tough.
It's tough. It's very tough. It's very tough. But no, you didn't ask your question. I feel like I should remind you that he was trying to ask you something provocative, but he couldn't.
No, I stopped. I stopped because I did remember which has been the replay from the brand, and so I said, okay, I won't ask it ever again. So that's the way I work. I first start talking, then my brain reminds me, hey guys, you already did it. Don't do it again. And so I stop it.
No, we're just curious about certifications, because sometimes I wonder, from my perspective, we leave sustainability as a path. We've been talking about journey, we've been talking about transparency, we've been talking about it's a philosophy, it's a mindset. That's what we say. We always say, yeah, it's a mindset, which it's a pretty cool way to say it. But on the other hand, I wonder sometimes, do we really need certifications? Are certifications the answer? My answer is yes, of course. We need pictures from today, what's happening today, but do we need so many? Or in my head sometimes I wonder if one day we will have again a common ground, a common tool, and maybe also a common politics That's all. And it's provocative. And if you want to answer, it's fine. Otherwise, we can skip to the next question.
No, I do agree, because from a brand's perspective, we are looking after ourselves. And ultimately, we recognize that our customers work with many, many, many other brands. But the difficulty that I foresee, and whether you both agree, is that if Mulberry asked for a audit of your facility, then Mulberry owns that report. But actually what the SLF philosophy does is turn that on its head, so that you guys as the manufacturing facility own the report, you do the audits yourself, and then you can share them widely. And we've onboarded new suppliers before who we ask them, as soon as we want to work with them, we say, have you got an audit report that you can share with us? And often they will say, no, we don't have anything that is their own property. So it's kind of putting the responsibility back onto the supply chain to say, look at your own, as I know you guys do, but look at your own facilities from this ESG perspective. Own your own audits that you are then happy to share with your customers, because then if you've got another customer saying that they want you to do, another audit, and they're not happy with what you've provided, bearing in mind that should be covering all the same questions, like Deb said, you've got this audit fatigue, then I'd push back to that customer and that brand and say, we don't understand why you need a duplication. And also, I don't think many brands realize how intensive audits can be if they have never lived through one, whether it's environmental, social, or governance. They are intense, as you guys know. They want to see everything. They want to see all of the skeletons in your closet, which is great. That's what an audit should do. But if you're doing that every single month, yeah, you're going to need 4, 5, 6 people, no doubt, to keep on top of it. So actually, even though you provoked a question, I do agree with you. It's not fair for the manufacturers to continually go through this process, and there should be a better standard in our industry to be able to cope with it.
But probably it is moving. It is changing.
But I would like to go back a little bit on the ESG matter. Okay, we all know, that as a tanner, as I was saying before, almost joking, but it's almost true, that we've been always considered the bad guys because we pollute the environment, because we kill cow. We don't kill cow. It's basically is a mantra. Even my 3-year-old daughter knows that tanners doesn't kill cows. But besides that, actually, we've been always showing a picture of ourselves of not such a clean business. So I can understand why there has been a huge focus on environmental stewardship, and where basically LWG stands, and then a little bit talking about traceability. But we've never been such a huge demand in terms of older things. Okay, sustainability for a certain amount of time has been completely linked to environments.
Yeah.
But we can fix a point zero in the history, okay? If we have a storyline, we go back to Rana Plaza. I wouldn't say accident, is a massacre, okay? There is a bunch of 1,000 people dying there. And out of that, there has been a first bell ringing, okay? Hey guys, maybe we have to look even to some other things, okay? There were workers, the environment were not safe and whatever. So out of that, basically, we have to move ahead about, I wouldn't say 20 years, because many brands has been working, but trying to secure and trying to understand where their goods had been making. But then after 20 years, we're still talking about something that now we have the way to rule them, but how can happen that basically it took 20 years of discussion in order to have something and to concentrate on something which is different from environment. Actually, even tanneries, we've been all traveling around. There are some tanneries that are worse than the place are much worse than that was in Rana Plaza. And but only now brands start, I would say now, in the last 2 years, taking care a little bit more on social and governance aspect.
Yeah, I think from my experience at Mulberry, we've been conducting social audits for nearly 20 years, but we've never spoken about it, and that's what's changed. I think the conversation, the topic has got to the forefront of our day-to-day considerations. When you purchase an item, you no longer just think about the materials and how long it's going to last. You think about who made it, and you think about the mileage of transport. We've had quite a considerable expose in the UK in the last couple of years in Leicester, where we had factories of workers who were being paid an incredibly low wage, creating fast fashion garments for high street brands. And the thing that shocked people the most was that it was happening in the UK. But actually, yeah, exactly. But actually it has happened and will continue to happen all around the world because of how we've set up this crazy fast fashion industry. But going back to why haven't brands concentrated on it before or brought it to light before? And I think it's because it's always been very risky from a scrutiny perspective. But now the brands who are talking about it are the ones who will gain respect and gain that consumer buy-in, because there's no point in trying to hide. There will always be somebody who will want to dig a little bit deeper. So you might as well show your hand, show your cards, and really be transparent about where you make things, who makes them, as well as the physical product materials itself. They have to link together.
Agree, but Rosie, maybe I will go a little bit, my question was a little bit more tricky. When I was working in a brand, we started conducting as well social audits, and it was something like 2014. And the reason was because our COO has been involved in the Rana Plaza accidents. And first things he said that we need to protect the brand in order to be sure not to work in those conditions. The question is different. I don't need to conduct that social to protect the brand, but I need to do because basically it's something that has to be done. I don't need to protect the brand. Actually, a brand must be well aware that they knows exactly where the goods are made and how they are made. Okay, it's not for the protection. It's just for doing good things. Okay, my bags is better than yours because I know. It's not because I know where it is made. It's just because it is well made. The workers are well paid, and I'm not always working for the cheaper place to produce my bag or to produce the pair of shoes that I wear today. Okay, this was more like, okay, so when maybe it happens, whether it has happened, a brand changes perspective, that I need to secure the brands I want to talk about how good we do things.
I think it became important when some of these things were raised in the public eye and some brands were caught out. And I know of a couple of well-known good brands in the UK that were caught out by modern slavery issues that they didn't really know existed because they didn't have a full control over their supply chain or their value chain. So they were caught unawares and they got the sharp end of that suddenly. And I think the other thing that has played a big part now is that where everybody has relied on voluntary standards to fill these gaps, that's no longer the case. And just Monday, the European Parliament has approved the Corporate Social Responsibility Directive. So that is going to be a legal requirement for brands that they are going to have to report on sustainability. And whereas a lot of these risks were kind of quite vague in understanding for most people because they were so far removed from the direct business, now that's not an excuse anymore. You have to know what's going on in your supply chain. I don't for 1 minute think that profit was not a motivator in the early days for some brands, that when they started on this, they wanted to protect their bottom line. But more and more brands like Mulberry and many brands are doing it for the right reasons now, because they do know that they'll get a better product and they'll get a better customer by looking after the way they do things and how they produce things. That's what we've got to encourage for the rest of the brands, really, and support that whole transition. It does also bring the consumer into focus, because we know that the consumers are into their bite-sized pieces of information now. And if they see something often enough, they'll believe it's true. But I still think that even though if you ask a consumer in a survey, would you pay more for sustainability? And they'll all say, oh, yes, of course I will, in the survey. The reality when they walk into that shop is that they won't. They will look at whether they like the product and whether it meets their pocket. You know, if they can afford it and they like it, they're going to buy it. The sustainability story behind that product, I believe, is still secondary. But when they're sitting in their armchair at home and they hear a horror story on the telly, then of course they're going to say sustainability is important. We all would. And I'm sure that we've all fallen foul of those times when we've done something, that we've bought something that we haven't considered the impact of that product, you know. And it's not just the leather industry, it's the whole fashion industry, it's society as a general, it's consumerism. But I think there is a shift now. I think people are understanding it. And to be fair, it's almost irrelevant at this point, because now that the legislation is starting to bite, we're being forced down that road.
Finally. Finally.
Yeah. And so to just bring it back to the foundation, that's my key priority, is to support our industry to do this for themselves in the right way now, and to give them the tools to do that. You know, again, if we're looking at a tannery that's got nothing at all and hasn't been thinking about this stuff for the last 20 years, where on earth do they start? You know, because things have moved on. And if you haven't been doing it incrementally for the last 20 years, you've got a real hill to climb. So if we can provide tools and support and guidance to encourage people to get on the path, even if they don't fully understand it right now, then at least we're helping industry to stay relevant.
Yeah, there's a simple question I think that we all have to answer in order to be sure where basically we're doing things good, which is this one. Would I will send my sons or daughter to work in the place where I made my bags, I made my shoes? Or my question is the same. Would I will send my daughter to, would I will ask my daughter to come to work here at Montebello? When the answer is ultimately yes, basically we're sure that we're doing things for goods. Otherwise, basically, there's no certifications or transparency matters that basically works in order to justify that we are doing the best in order to better manufacture what we are then basically selling to the consumer. And one thing I would it's quite funny. It's in last year when we've been quite promoting a lot to the brands our way to make sustainable leather, or I would say our way to be transparent, our way to be traceable and whatever. And at the end, it always came, wow, that's fun and it's very good. We're doing very good things, and you know what everybody is saying. And my last question was, but are you ready to pay for this? And say, what do you mean? That's the transformation to a better business doesn't really came for free. And in terms not, you cannot weigh it in margin. It's a matter of time, it's a matter of instrument, it's a matter of technology, investments, whatever, which is something that I wouldn't say that we have not to do it, or we have to consider whether or not doing things for better. It's just that are brands and consumer aware that transition is not for free? Because basically, I think this is something that some brands and some consumer doesn't really understood. Just a question, just a small precision. It's moving from oil-based to electricity or whatever, more sustainable, renewable sources in order to heat our houses doesn't come for free. And we are experiencing this year, because we've been moved to change a little bit due to the actual geopolitical situation, and we realize that it's the hell expensive. I would say, sorry, it's not expensive. It has a cost, which for sure is less than the cost we would pay in the future if we are not going to move to a better way to do things. So the question, going back, are brands aware? Are consumers aware? It's up to you.
I think brands are becoming aware, and we have a responsibility now to educate our consumers. Something that I think of quite often is for businesses that don't get on board with sustainability now, they won't be a business in 5-10 years' time. Because it's like Deborah said around the legislation, it's not going to be an option anymore. We have to make changes. We're heating up our planet. We are using all of our resources. We have to make a change. And you're right, there's a cost associated with that now, but by investing in it now, it becomes normal in the future and the cost will come down. So whether that's investing in your new technology, investing in traceability mechanisms, investing in trialing less harmful chemistry, all of these things will have your research and development costs at the beginning, and then eventually they will come down. So the investment, I think, is worth it for brands and for manufacturers. And now we have to figure out how to tell the consumers that that's happening. But also from an outside perspective, for people who might look to be investing in our company, our shareholders, they are only going to want to do that if they know that we are working to transition to a more sustainable future. And they know that that doesn't come for free. So again, it's about showing your hand, showing the journey, and bringing all of your stakeholders along with you. And at the end of that, hopefully, we will have made so many amazing transitions that actually it will just be normal. And this will be the right thing, the right way to do it, and the right thing to do as well.
So basically, we can agree on something that if these things, and we are sure that is going to create value, the transition, we cannot talk about cost. We have to talk about opportunity. And so let's say that we want this opportunity in terms of industry, okay? And
can I just
let's see whether the consumer will help us. Otherwise, there's no other choice. Easy. We have to go ahead.
I just have to say I love talking to you. I love these webinars, and I have to say it. It's very Viola for me to say this, but I have to, because you give me hope. I mean, I know what you do in your jobs. I know what we are doing. I know the struggle. I know the commitment. I know the passion. But every time I talk to you, I feel safe. I feel like we are on the same boat, and you are inspiring. Sorry for being so me, but I have to say it. Thank you. It's been a hard day today at the tannery, and so you gave me a great afternoon, actually.
There will be a tougher day than this one, so don't worry.
After this.
She's young.
I know. No, I've been summarizing in my head. I write down while you talk, and I have the same, I like it because I have the same concepts that keep running into our heads and during our talks, which are transparency, measurement, and partnership. And so I just wanted to share that we are finally, or at least we're talking to the right people here.
So if there's no other questions, I think that we've been talking for so long. I think that we can say hi to all the guests we had here. I would like really to thank deeply Deborah and Rosie, and just saying that after this, we're going to have a fantastic spritz, the orange spritz, and we will be thinking to you.
Oh, cheers.
Grazie.
Cheers to that.
Cheers.
Salute.
And for sure, actually, we're waiting for you here in presence as soon as you can, so we can have a spritz together.
For sure, we will be there. Thank you so much.
We'll be
Grazie
there.
mille.
So, girls, thank you very much
Have a
for your
good
time and for the things that we've been learning today. See you to
Really
the
good
next
to
one.
talk with you.
Take care.
Bye,
Thanks
bye.
all.
Bye.
Bye.
Grazie.
Bye.